This was Israel's 9/11, and to anybody at home thinking about this, remember how we felt after our 9/11. Remember how Israelis felt after their 9/11, where 1,200 civilians were killed. We're in the same circumstance, and we cannot take our foot off. Just as we never stop pursuing terrorism, we hope Israel will follow through and protect their homeland as well.
We begin tonight with Israel's ongoing war against Hamas in Gaza, with no end in sight as the year comes to a close. There's also no sign of when or how the remaining 129 or so hostages will go free. In Washington today, Israeli cabinet member Ron Dermer met with top Biden administration officials. He knows how to navigate Washington very well as a former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. And the U.S. has been pressuring Israel to adopt a more surgical approach to the war to avoid civilian casualties. But while Israel says it's planning for a new phase of the war, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is still doubling down on his intentions to eliminate Hamas as a military threat through increasingly ferocious military assaults. We're joined now by Paul Chabot, a former Navy intelligence officer. Paul, welcome back to the show. It's so good to have you.
Lindsay, great to be with you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. Okay, so it seems like there is some daylight now between Israel and the U.S., with Prime Minister Netanyahu saying over the weekend that he wants to increase military and their assault in Gaza, something the U.S. is asking them not to do. But we had Ron Dermer, military cabinet member, war cabinet member, rather, meeting with Antony Blinken and Jake Sullivan today. What do they need to figure out? Where are the gaps here?
Well, I think there's going to be gaps, and we're at a point in this war right now, historically, where after a certain amount of time has gone on, society, people, leaders begin to kind of take their eye off the target. We get used to seeing this sort of destruction, and so we are in a war. Israel has called for the absolute elimination of Hamas based on them killing 1,200 innocent Israelis. And so now we're at a point where we see the United States asking for proportionate types of attacks. And Netanyahu, I think, is rightfully to say, look, let's remember day one when 1,200 of our people were killed and we pledged to eliminate Hamas. That's the end state for Israel to ensure their security going forward.
So this war has been going on for over 80 days now, 129 hostages or so in Gaza. We know those negotiations we thought before Christmas were going to happen aren't happening right now. Do you see these hostages being released by some form of diplomatic negotiation, or will it be through force, as Prime Minister Netanyahu is implicating?
This is going to be a long war, and I think it's going to be through force. And a few interesting things have happened. First, Egypt has injected themselves to try to find an ability for the two sides to work together. But even Hamas is against Egypt's plan. Hamas really wants a stalemate to this, which will allow them to regroup. Israel's smart enough to know that we can't do this again. We want all of our hostages back, period. Then we can begin to discuss these things. What we're seeing, though, I think, is very precision type of strikes by special forces within the Israeli government, IDF, targeting to save and get out their hostages. This is going to continue for quite some time. And I just think that where we are now, we have to support Israel, understand where they are, but also historically what it is that we're up against.
So shifting gears a little bit pertaining to the Middle East, just this morning, President Biden ordered the U.S. military to strike an Iranian-backed militant group who had attacked our U.S. military, injuring 3, critically 1. Right. So far, we have seen over 100 Iranian-backed militant group attacks on our U.S. forces in the Middle East. Yeah. This is the first we've really seen the U.S. strongly retaliate. But how much of this is planned specifically from Iran? Is Iran asking these groups to specifically carry out these attacks?
Yeah, without a doubt. And Iran's been behind this for quite some time. When I was in Iraq in 2008, they were behind most of the IEDs that were killing and maiming our service members. They've been involved in this today. They've called for the elimination of the United States, of Israel, of the West. And so they're going to continue to use these proxies. What's dangerous right now about this is that this administration has used the word proportionate. And why that is so dangerous is because when we are attacked, now over 100 times, as you said, one of our service members critically yesterday, Iran, their proxies now know that this is going to be a response of equal nature. That is not how you win wars. That is not how you fight an enemy. We have to decimate the enemy. We have to go further. Now, look, Trump went after #1 within the Iranian government military. That put a strong signal on Iran and pushed them back. The problem for the United States is we gave money back to Iran, which used that money largely to help refund Hamas. Now they have their proxies spreading throughout the Middle East. And America is not in a very good situation right now to speak to Israel about calming down their efforts against an enemy that has called for the destruction of us and Israel.
Why hasn't the U.S. been more successful in deterring these attacks, or because we see them increasing? They don't seem to be becoming fewer.
Right. Look, when you look at terror networks, drug cartels, whatever it is, the apparatus behind this is always money. Most of these foreign fighters, as we learned in Iraq historically, which we're not applying today to the Middle East, and it's a shame for American foreign policy, is when we take away the money, when the money removes, the foreign fighters are no longer on the battlefield. Most of these attacks are coming from those that are getting paid to hit us, our allies, and Israel. We gave billions of dollars back to Iran, which has basically taken their terror bank account to fund all these operations again. And that money's going to exist for quite some time. And now we're in this situation where we are today. And that's why looking at an easy way out is not. We have to look at supporting Israel and doing all we can to eliminate terror. And remember, this was Israel's 9/11. And to anybody at home thinking about this, remember how we felt after our 9/11. Remember how Israelis felt after their 9/11, where 1,200 civilians were killed. We're in the same circumstance, and we cannot take our foot off. Just as we never stop pursuing terrorism, we hope Israel will follow through and protect their homeland as well.